Well, Steve, Ohio State is the number 2 team in the country, according to those 13 that hold all the power in college football.
Yeah, that's what they were in the AP poll and the coaches poll. Not that those are the overriding things in the world. I'm kind of in a little cocoon here. So I see the big games. I know that, what was it? Tennessee beat Alabama a few weeks ago. And what was it? Georgia stomped Oregon way back at the beginning of the season. So I know the big ones, but I can't get too deep into the weeds to do a resume search on all of these top 8 or 9 teams that we think are going to be in contention for these 4 spots. I know Clemson and TCU are both undefeated and both have defeated 3 or 4 ranked teams. Ohio State's beaten 2 ranked teams, one of which is no longer ranked, Notre Dame. The other one, Penn State, I think is a pretty good team that beat an SEC also ran Auburn that just fired its coach in their stadium, beat them like a drum. And, Auburn's not going to really make many waves in the SEC this year, so you can't really hold that up as, look, Ohio State did this to a team that did this to an SEC team. So, it's all apples to oranges comparisons in some regard, and, a beauty contest in other regards. And the neat thing about it is, of the teams that are at the top, we know Georgia is going to play Tennessee, and we know the winner of the Georgia-Tennessee game is probably going to play Alabama, barring, 2 more losses by Alabama. They're going to be in the SEC championship game, or 1 more loss. Is LSU right on their heels, or what?
They are. If LSU wins this Saturday, they're in the driver's seat.
Yeah. So, any rate, I can't imagine that's going to happen, though. And I think LSU is an okay team, but I mean, Tennessee just completely obliterated them. So, I don't know. Again, it's all apples to oranges, and there's so much more football left to be played that we will know. I think last year it was pretty clear who the top 4 teams were, and they took those 4 teams. I mean, as you looked at it, Michigan had beaten Ohio State and Cincinnati had beaten Notre Dame, and so it was obvious why Ohio State, Notre Dame got left behind and the other 4 schools got in. So I think we'll have much the same thing happen this year.
Well, Steve, I'm guessing that between the 3 of us, we've got your resumes covered, because I think from what I know of these other 2 and myself, we're big on resumes. So here we go, Tony. So I'll tell you 2 things before I'm going to let you go on what you think is important here. One would be, for me, it says a lot when TCU's number 7. So they sent us a message right there. TCU's behind Alabama as an undefeated team despite the ranked wins. Number 2, 1 week from now, let's see where that Georgia-Tennessee loser drops. How far do they drop? That's going to be considerable.
Yeah, Mark and Kevin and myself, along with Tom Orr, were live during the reveal for about 2 hours last night, and then I jumped on the call as well, the teleconference with the committee folks, so that I could get all of their lies into my ears firsthand. But it feels like TCU is the floor for the SEC 1-loss teams. Like Tennessee or Georgia is not going to fall below TCU because Alabama is already there. And that's very unfortunate for TCU. And just listening to the way that Boo Corrigan would justify teams over others, and sometimes it's number of ranked wins, sometimes it's number of wins over 500 teams. Just whatever they need, that's what it was. That was one of the, I think they used the Clemson has 5 wins over 500 teams and Michigan has 2. So they used that for their part of their reasoning for having Clemson over Michigan. But yet you look at TCU, and I believe they have 5 wins over 500 teams, and Alabama has 3. And yet Alabama also has a loss, and they're still ahead of TCU. Even LSU being as high as they are, they have 2 losses. Penn State has 2 losses. Penn State has lost to the number 2 team and the number 5 team. LSU has lost to Florida State, and they have beaten Ole Miss. And yet they do have a common opponent in there in a trip to Auburn, and Penn State blew out Auburn. LSU beat Auburn by 3 or 4 points, held on for that win. So it gives you plenty of evidence that they love the SEC per usual. I believe it is the top undefeated team is an SEC team. The top 1-loss team is an SEC team. Top 2-loss team is an SEC team. And then you get to the bottom where you have a 3-loss team in Texas who played Alabama. So they are effectively an SEC team this year for Alabama's purposes. So more of the same from the committee.
And a 2-loss SEC team in LSU that's far above a bunch of 1-loss teams. Kevin, what hit you the most out of the rankings unveiling?
Just the fact that we all like to get outraged about it. We go in saying, I'm not going to be outraged. I'm not going to be outraged. And then we're outraged. I'm just kind of sickened by the ACC love in the bottom of the poll, the NC States and the Wake Forests. I don't get it. I know that at some point you run out of 2-loss teams and you have to just start putting people in there, but NC State doesn't have Devin Leary anymore. I just don't know how they get to some of their methodology in terms of that. Is that in order to boost Clemson's claim when that comes in, because Clemson is drawing dead. They play nobody the rest of the year. I mean, I know we look at these percentages of who you got and what that means for your percentages of going 12-0 when it's gross. I just don't like it. I mean, I don't like the way that they handled, I think LSU was ranked way too high. I was shocked that Michigan was where Michigan was. At least I'll say that I agree with how the top 3 was. I mean, I could have seen it any way on there, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I felt that they did a good job at the very top of it, but I feel like in terms of how they kind of filled in the rest of it, it just felt kind of agenda driven.
This is an incredible number. I counted this up as I did my top 25 on Sunday. There are 42 6-2 or 5-3 teams. And there's a glut of them in the ACC and the SEC. And the issue that I have in ranking these teams is many of the 5-3 teams, I think, play much more difficult schedules and therefore accumulated those 3rd losses because of that. And just trying to compare teams and then dipping into the group of 5, which obviously isn't an issue in terms of getting the 4 right, because that's a complete non-factor this year.